Hi, everyone. Now we have an opportunity to speak with Ranjay Gulati, professor from the Harvard Business School and author of the new book, Deep Purpose. Hi, Ranjay. Welcome.
Scott, pleasure to be here with you today.
So, Ranjay, let's jump right in. What is Deep Purpose? The name of your new book, but also the idea.
So, let me first start by telling you I wanted to have a one word title to my book. I really wanted to call it Purpose because someone had told me that one word titles are the way to go. I couldn't. I just couldn't because I just have found so many companies that talked a lot about purpose but didn't really do much with it. Or it was kind of one of those ceremonial things, and it played into my own cynicism about this mission statement, purpose statement stuff. It was like wallpaper, you kind of had one, check the box, and onward you go. But then I found some companies who really went deep with it, meaning it wasn't just a purpose statement. It was it's a way of being. It was something that informed everything they did. And so it made me realize, I had to change the title of my book and call it Deep Purpose. I even had to have a chapter where I had a taxonomy of shallow purpose. Like there were different kinds of versions of this kind of superficial purpose that I found. And then I realized, for me, the big first learning was purpose is not a purpose statement.
Okay. And what is it?
So purpose is, I think, is a generalized intention about how you want to be in the world. Literally, what does purpose mean? It's about having clear understanding of why are you here, right? You can look at William Damon's definition as a psychologist who talks about it as a kind of a enduring belief that gives you personal meaning, but also about how you want to have an impact in the world around you. So and I found that purpose has got several components to it. First, it identifies your goals, like, hey, we are here to do bang. Second, it also has a component of kind of duties and responsibilities, like, hey, we want to make a difference in the world in the following positive way, right? Third, it has kind of a long-term vision, like it's enduring about where are we going, why are we here? And when you start thinking long-term, a natural corollary of that is it is a multi-stakeholder orientation. So it's the coming together of these ideas that allows companies to say, okay, you know what, that's our purpose.
So, with the implications clear, meaning that if you only have a purpose statement and you don't have what you just described, you obviously don't have any financial impact or growth opportunity happening. What do you think is the most important thing that a CEO should take away from this book? They don't have a lot of time. We've heard a lot of talk about purpose. What is it you're offering in this book? What idea are you providing that they should take away from reading the book?
I've spent my whole career studying unlocking growth potential of companies, right? That's what I studied, top line and bottom line growth potential. And I think I've studied how companies should have a great strategy. I've looked at how companies should have a great implementation plan to their strategy. And all my life, I thought it was about strategy and implementation coming together. I feel one of the most underutilized unlock of performance for companies is their purpose, having a purpose. And that unlock gives you an economic and social performance. So you get both. And I think we kind of somehow have convinced ourselves that purpose is just smoke and mirrors. And we engage, unfortunately, more in purpose posturing. I think that, for me, the biggest one principle is you can't do something with your purpose.
And if you do that one thing with the purpose, what type of performance have you seen with and some of the companies that you've looked into?
So, people have started the holy grail of trying to measure purpose and correlate it to company performance. But they're so noisy because performance can be affected by so many things. And how do you measure purpose? So I went after the pathways by which purpose can impact performance. And I think there are 4 pathways identified. The first one is motivational. Purpose energizes employees. It creates inspired workers, not more engaged, not satisfied, inspired workers. And we know from a 2015 Harvard Business Review study that inspired workers can be more than twice as productive as satisfied workers. So that's one, right? A second benefit is really around what I would call is reputational. Something, Scott, you understand really well is the idea that customers care about companies with purpose, right? We perceive them as more trustworthy. We are more loyal to them. We believe them. We believe they have our best interests, right? So you have branding benefits of purpose. That I call that reputational. There's a third benefit, what I call relational. And relational is what I'm finding is companies today talk a lot about ecosystems and partnerships, and with your suppliers, with your customers, with your complementers, with other technology companies. And what you find is that companies with a purpose have an easier time building connections and relationships because it elicits transparency, it elicits trust, and allows you to change the nature of conversation. Now, if you look at all of this coming together, it's what I would say the changing of a firm from an economic vision of a nexus of contract, that everyone is in a contract with this firm. We all want our piece of the action, to a nexus of commitments. How that relational construct starts to change is one large piece of the chunk of the story. There's another benefit of purpose, which is around directional benefit, where purpose is a compass. In today's turbulent times with ups and downs going on, purpose creates an orienting framework. What should we do? What should we not do? So I see tangible, immediate benefits. In fact, a number of companies I studied were in the midst of a turnaround, trying to fundamentally transform their performance trajectory of the company. If you look at Microsoft's story under Satya Nadella, or you look at Lego's story under Johan Knudstrup, right? You look at Starbucks with Howard Schultz coming back saying purpose is missing. And I can go on and on and on about companies saying we're in a performance funk and we want to play a different game. And that's what I've learned also, that purpose gives you real competitive advantage in today's marketplace, even on talent. We're such a scarce market for talent right now. And you ask yourself the question, can purpose give me an advantage, especially with millennials? Does it matter? And if it matters, to whom? And do I want those kind of people to work for me or not?
While you raise the question of recruitment and employees, do employees really care?
So this is the perennial question we get asked. Employees do care about pay, no question about that. Employees care about pay for performance. We've known that for a long, long time. They care about it today like they did yesterday. We've known that for decades. But we've also known something else for decades, that employees care about something besides pay, right? Whether you want to go back to Maslow or anybody else, Frederick Herzberg, I can go back and rattle off like a dozen theorists in the 50s and 40s, in the 30s, who talked about the non-economic benefits that employees look for in the workplace. It's not an either or. But what has happened is we've ignored those, that people care about other benefits of work. They look for interesting work. They look for a great place to work, right? They look for a positive culture. They look for smart employees. They look for more empowerment, all those things. But I think employees also care about purpose. Not all, some, but the ones who do are most likely the ones you want to have working for you. Because when they connect their purpose with the company purpose, you get a different kind of person showing up.
The stars of the organization sort of rally around the purpose.
You would hope so. You would hope so. And I think, and I may sound idealistic over here, but I think is what has happened. Think about the alternative model we've created for ourselves. It's what I call the coin-operated monkey theory of management. That we're all monkeys with a coin machine attached to us or a jukebox, and all you do is put coins in me and I'll dance for you. And the more coins you put in, the more I'll dance.
Some people have said that you're the CEO whisperer. In your book, you've talked about a lot of companies. Could you talk a little bit, without naming names unless you wish to, some examples of CEOs that have really become impassioned with purpose as a leader? And what is it about them that makes them so interested in purpose? What is it about their character or their background that you think makes them just have a stronger affinity to purpose and engaging in purpose?
Several things. First one, some of them have a personal story, right? It's really deeply personal to them. Coming from sometimes a place of tragedy, and, one I can mention to you, which is like, I did a podcast with him also, is Niren Chaudhary, the CEO of Panera. He has a personal tragedy in his life. He lost two children,
Oh my.
and how that really transformed his own thinking. And his second child, before she died, did a TED talk, a very impressive young woman, and talked about the purpose of life. So he has carried that with him and informed his thinking as a leader.
Wow.
Satya Nadella talked about how his own thinking was informed by his late son, who just passed away recently, unfortunately,
Mm,
who was severely handicapped, and how it taught him something about humanity and empathy,
mm,
right? So some of them come at it from there. I also think that COVID, Ukraine, so much happening around us today is forcing leaders to rethink themselves in terms of why am I here? And if they don't do it, their employees make them do it, because then now you have vocal employees who are taking you to task if you don't stand up for fundamental things that they believe and why the company exists. And you have to navigate this quagmire. I think Ukraine decision about should we exit Russia was easy. It's now going to be decisions like, what do you think of voting rights, abortion rights, gun rights, local issues? What's your point of view? And I think sitting on the sideline saying, we're a business, we don't take a position on these things, is getting very hard for leaders today.
There was a moment during COVID when, I know you probably remember, there was a business person, he was having a Zoom call, and behind him his little child walks in the room and he was trying to push him out of the room, broke through the wall of business and life. And what I think you're saying is that we need the leaders that are, of course, that have had a tragedy, but more importantly, that are vulnerable, seem to be able to connect with a bigger need for change in society. And through that change, they can funnel their business that becomes highly inspirational for their organization. We can call it purpose, but it's a motivational idea. Does that kind of make sense?
It's very nicely said, Scott. I will tell you, in one of the chapters in my book, I borrow from a very famous Stanford sociologist named Jim March, who talked about leaders as plumbers and poets.
Mm.
And the idea is that, leaders need to do plumbing, no question about it. Plumbing is build a strategy, hire a team, incent them, reward them, tweak the strategy, resource allocation, building the financial model, making sure all those things are working, customer connection, understanding all that, right? But leaders need to be poets as well. They need to inspire employees. How do you engage them in a grand narrative about our purpose? We're here to do something great. How do we do that?
I saw recently there was some research that said that leaders that are smart, leaders that are crazy, and a few other traits, but inspirational was the one that by far motivated most employees. So that's a great point. So as we round up this interview, it's been short, but I very much appreciate this conversation. I just want to say I really, really loved your book. Could you talk about, you mentioned Microsoft and you mentioned a few other firms, KPMG, EY. Is there an example, Mahindra is another one I know you've studied, of a company that has done it really, really well and is an inspiration for us all?
I think there's so many. I mean, I would talk about Gotham Green with you, which does agro farming on urban rooftops. And for those who don't live in Massachusetts, you're too bad. But I would talk about One Mighty Mill, which is a bakery company here in Massachusetts. You start to see them kind of infusing purpose right into their DNA from the very beginning, to the point where you don't even have to talk about it. It's kind of part of who we are. I mean, that's what purpose becomes, right? It's really about identity. It's about meaning. It's about why we come to work. It's what we do. So all decisions get filtered through it. And I think so for me, it's been fascinating to see small companies. And, a lot of times founders come into this with that kind of expansive notion of purpose. And I've been talking to venture capitalists too, who say that, when they meet a founder who comes in not just with here's my widget or here's my idea versus here's my ideal, here's how I want to change the world, here's how I want to really impact this customer base, and I want to really impact society, I want to address a big problem. That's impressive. And if they stick with it and they really mean it, that is magical. And I saw that actually. That's why, and as I was writing the book, I realized my own mother's business had been just like that.
Hmm.
The challenge is, how do you scale it then? And that becomes the hard part.
Ranjay Gulati, professor at the Harvard Business School, author of Deep Purpose. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Scott. It's really been a pleasure to talk to you, and I wish all of you all the very best. And I look forward to being in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.